Greetings everyone from our lovely island here in the sun. In this video we are going to be talking about how we can go about creating a table in Microsoft Access. Please be sure to see our previous video that looked at defining Microsoft Access, what it is, defining a database, and how you go about locating the application on your local machine. So on my screen at the moment, I have opened a database file, a Microsoft Access file. So far, I have not created anything within the database. Opening Microsoft Access will actually take me to this template page. It's prudent for us to actually begin with a blank database. Of course, there are other templates that you can practice using as time goes on or as you become more familiar with the application itself, but it is advisable to start with the blank database first of all. So I'm going to click on the blank database here, and the program will actually ask me to save it with a particular file name. You want to make that name relevant to the immediate endeavor, so that if you're looking for the file 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month from now, you can find it based on the name. We're going to assume for this activity that we work for a company and we would like to create a database with our clients, right? So I'm going to call this, I won't even give it the name of the company, let's just call it clients database for now. And notice that there is a browse folder here right beside the name of the file. If you click on that, it will allow you to actually store the database in some location. Now, I like to use Google Drive because it will afford me options of accessing the file when I'm not using this local machine. So I prefer to use some cloud storage device on my computer itself. It's up to you where you go about saving. For this practice, I'm actually going to save it in documents for now. Hit OK, and from here hit create. And this is what my database looks like so far. It automatically creates a table for me, and it is important to note that this entire database will actually have various objects within it as you go about creating them. So for example, I have one table so far that is called table 1, but as I go about creating other tables and maybe queries later on, then these objects will actually show up within the database on my left. Okay, now at the very top, running across, is your usual ribbon. If you're familiar with Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, then you will be afforded a similar ribbon as Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word, along with various groups. So from my home tab, for example, I do have a views group and a clipboard group, a sort and filter group, and within each group a set of options relevant to that particular group. Now this table is actually called table 1, so I'm going to actually save my table first of all because I do need it. If you go to your views tab on the left and choose the view option and change the view from the datasheet view at the moment, and we'll talk about what the datasheet view is in a second, and choose design view, that will actually give you the option to save the table. Alright, I'm going to leave it as table 1 for now, and I'm going to scroll across to my right. Here there's a small X that allows me to close that table. The table is still here, the database looks empty at the moment, but the object itself is still here. If I wanted to reopen that table, I could simply double click on it to open the table once more. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to right click on my table, and I'm going to choose delete to get rid of it. Access will actually give me a warning. I'm going to say yes, I actually want to delete this table, and now I have no objects on my left. In order for me to create a table within Access, there is a create tab. I'm going to click on my create tab, and within my tables group there's a table option here. So if you should open Access and there wasn't a table already, you could still create a table by going to that Create tab and choosing Table from the Tables group. Now, what you're looking at the moment is the datasheet view. Here is where your records will actually show up within your database. All right, we are not yet adding those records because we need to tell Microsoft Access what type of records it should be prepared to receive. So let us change the view and go to the design view, and let's save our table maybe as clients. Later on you might have a second table called products or employees. So we're going to save this table as a table called clients, and my view has been changed here to the design view, which will then allow me to set the different characteristics for this table. The ID, we will leave the ID as is for now. It's an auto number. If you think about all the applications, online applications and websites that you use, each time you sign up with a username and password, you're probably not the only person with that name from that region and so forth and so on. So your ID is a unique number that the database will provide that is pertinent to just your profile. So we're going to leave that blank so that the database can populate IDs for each user. And right on the ID, I'm going to type first name. So Access knows that it should be accepting records for first names, and the type, because first name itself is not understandable by Access, right? But if we tell it the type of data, then it begins to develop an understanding of what type of data it should be accepting. So right now it is a short text. We could leave it as short text. You could choose to put a description in there if the database is being used for someone else, or you're sending it to someone else, or you want to remind yourself later on. So we could say the client's first name, for example, or client's first name, for example. And of course, if we have a first name, we probably should have a last name. Short text is fine. We could also, and I'm simply clicking in the cells that I want. I could use the tab key to jump back and forth between, and the arrow keys to jump back and forth between these. The short text for an address is probably not wise. I'm going to change that by clicking on my drop down arrow, and the very next option is the long text. I'm going to choose that. If you want to put a description for the others, you can. The description is not necessary, but it is good for later reference. I'm going to also say email, so that we could probably choose a hyperlink from the data type that is available, and I'm going to say registered. Maybe the client has registered with us, and for a registered question it might just be a yes or no. All right, so there are many different data types that we can actually choose from. Currency, for example, date and time, for example. So you can begin to tell Access what type of information it should actually be accepting. Note also that there is a field properties option for each data type, so you can go through and change these values to be representative of the type of data that you're entering. All right, a number, for example, might be a long number, an integer might include decimals, so you will avoid errors in your database that way. So far we've told Microsoft Access that it should accept a first name, last name, the address, the email, and it should give us an option to say whether or not the client has registered with us. All right, so we have no records yet. Just think about this as us organizing the database to accept data. All right, now the next step, if we go back to the view tab and the data sheet view, this is an applet that is going to ask us, yes, we should save this table. So I'm going to hit yes. And this is now going to take us to the datasheet view where we can begin entering records. Note that there is an easy or a very quick way to actually add a category here instead of changing the view. So we could choose to do that also, but if you go to the design view, then that is going to allow you to change the field properties as well. So we could enter some quick records in here. I'm going to say, let's say client 1, for example. First name is client, last name is 1, and the address 14 Bisbee Lane, Bronx, New York 10456, and the email is client1@gmail.com. We're going to choose yes, this client is registered, and then we could go on to enter client 2, and I'm using the tab key here to go from one slot to the next, and this is 15 Bisbee Lane, coincidentally, Bronx, New York 10456, I believe it was. And let's give them an email. Now if we said this was, let's just say client Gmail, and we went on to hit that yes, it's going to actually create this as a hyperlink, and it's unable to open HTTP client Gmail, right? So we want to make sure that we're actually entering the email properly, otherwise we're going to have errors in there. Okay, that's important. If you do make a mistake within your database, there are times when the database itself becomes corrupt, and so you might have to go right back to the beginning or start all over again. So you want to be really careful as you go about entering the information inside your database. Okay, so this will actually allow you not to make errors when you set the database to include the different data types in here. So I could come back and change this, for example, to a short text. It's going to ask me to save it. The style of the field has actually been changed to a shorter size. If the data is lost, validation rules may be violated as a result. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go to my client at client2 at gmail.com, and of course it has the HTTP in there that was there before, and so we might have to change those accordingly. Okay, if we change it back to the email, then it will work once more. It's actually giving you the mail too, making our lives a lot easier. All right, so here's how we would go about creating records within Microsoft Access, and here is how we would go about creating our table by going to the Create tab, jump into Table, and it will create that table for you. And to actually add characteristics for your table, you're going to change the view, go to Design View. You're going to save your table with a relevant name. Note that the name of the table is different from the name of the database, and you're going to tell Microsoft Access what type of records you're going to be entering inside that table, just so that Microsoft Access can accept the specific data types that you have set. All right, in order for you to reopen that table, you're going to double click on the table you want to reopen. Note that this doesn't have to be email, it could have been a number, for example, and you would actually set the precedence for that in the data type. Okay, so in essence, we have simply created a table just now. within this database, and that table will allow us to accept records inside our database. And our database is simply used to store some type of information for an individual, for a group, for an organization, for a company. All right, this concludes our short tutorial on creating tables within Microsoft Access. We hope you find it useful and instrumental in your endeavors with Microsoft Access going forward. In our next video, we are actually going to be talking about how you go about creating a query, what a query is first of all, and how you go about creating a query inside Microsoft Access. Please feel free to leave us a comment or shoot us an email if there is a particular tutorial or video that you would like to see, and actually how you found this video. Thank you.